All right, you guys. So in the second part of the notes, we want to try to understand how groundwater works and how it relates to the way water cycles through the watershed. So if you have ground that is really just like loosely packed gravel, not really rapid drainage, and you're going to have a lot of water that's going to go through. Basically, all the water that comes to the surface of the land will go through. If you have more of like a fine sand, then most of your water is still going to get through. So it's like 4 out of 5 water droplets. But if you have clay, which we have a lot of in Colorado, or if we have like really solid rock, like granite or basalt or something like that, that is what we call impermeable. And so we cannot get any water through the solid rock, and we can really only get like a tiny, tiny bit of water through clay. So based on that, think about which rock would make the best aquifer. So which one would store the best water and allow water to move the best. And then think about 2 characteristics that these rocks would have in order to be a good aquifer. Groundwater is fresh water that's held in rocks underground and can be removed for usage through wells. So you dig down until you get to the water table, and at the water table you can access groundwater. So you dig into the groundwater a little bit. And usually we can find groundwater in rocks that have a high volume of open space. And so they have lots of pores, which means they have high permeability. So greater porosity, so large pores, and a lot of permeability. So that makes it really easy for the water to get in there and move around. So it's just the ability of a material to transmit fluid is the definition of permeability. If it has less porosity, it has lower permeability, and it is not as good of an aquifer, and it doesn't store as much groundwater. So groundwater systems can be really different. So on the left we have a shallow groundwater system in a healthy desert stream, and on the right we have a shallow groundwater in an arid environment, somewhere like a really, really dry desert. So take a minute in your notes, identify 3 similarities and 3 differences between these 2 systems. Okay, now that you've identified your similarities and differences, I'm just going to point out a few that stand out to me. So one thing that I can see is that the water table is pretty high over here, and so the tree roots are able to drink the groundwater. Both of these different trees, the cottonwood and the mesquite, and then they can just have a really simple windmill well to access their water, and then they have rain from the mountains filling their stream bed, and the stream will keep flowing even if there's no rain, because there's groundwater that's touching the stream. And over here, the storm water, it's held in these kind of puddles because and then it helps fill the groundwater. Over here, our stream bed actually is absorbing the water into the ground instead of the ground putting water into the stream. So the stream water from the mountains doesn't even make it all the way down here. And the roots of both trees are not touching the water, so those trees are really struggling to live. They have to get a much deeper well, and it shows the historical water table, so where the water table used to be, and now it's too dry. So either too much groundwater has been used, or the climate conditions have changed and less rain is falling. There's a lot of differences between these two scenarios. Another thing that's important for us to study when we're talking about groundwater is fracking. Fracking is a really common practice in Colorado, and it's very controversial, and so I think it's just important that we weigh the pros and cons of this process. So if you look at this image, it kind of shows what goes on with fracking. So I don't know why there's like a nuclear thing on here. There's no nuclear anything involved with fracking. They're just using different types of chemicals, and they drill down into the ground and they make this white cement casing, and they drill through the groundwater, below the groundwater. So you have an impermeable layer right here, this kind of gray squiggly one, and so that's rock that groundwater cannot go through. So it's like bedrock. And then once they go down there, they use like water and sand and different chemicals to crack the bedrock to get oil and natural gas out of the bedrock and back up to where we can use it. So in that process, the idea is that all of the water and sand and fracking chemicals stay inside the cement pipe. And so they go down, and then they do their job, and then they come back up, and they get taken away where they can be dealt with appropriately. But what people worry about is because they're using really high pressure to break up the bedrock, and then they're slurping all of the oil and natural gas out of it, it really destabilizes the ground. And so as long as this cement casing stays intact, there's absolutely no concern, right? Everything's fine. But when you start cracking the bedrock and taking stuff out, it destabilizes the ground. And we've seen a lot of earthquakes, especially in Oklahoma, that have resulted from the ground collapsing because of fracking. So when the ground collapses, everything resettles, and you have the potential for a couple things to happen. One thing that can happen is that this casing, the cement casing, breaks, and then the chemicals from fracking will get into the groundwater. Another possibility is that the cracks will expand too far and they'll bust through the bedrock into the groundwater layer, and you'll get methane and oil in your groundwater. That's something that we have observed is methane contamination in people's groundwaters, in their wells and coming out of their faucets. So if it's done correctly and they don't have a lot of issues with resettlement of earth, fracking can be totally safe, but it is kind of difficult to say that it will always be safe, because like we're purposefully destabilizing the ground. And so for some people, they feel like that's worth the risk in order to have our own source of fuel and decrease dependence on foreign oil. And for some people, they don't think it's worth that risk because they don't want to be able to light their tap water on fire because it has so much methane, and they don't want to worry about drinking fracking chemicals. And so it just, that starts to get into some of the political questions, which isn't really my area of expertise. But I do think that when we are talking about fracking and safety, we really need to prioritize the safety bit. There's a little video I'd like you to watch as well, and answer a couple questions. What's the purpose of fracking? How's it related to groundwater? And what are some potential problems caused by fracking? Okay. Some more components of the watershed are rivers and streams. Their movement, they transport water, and there's two types of rivers or streams. There's influent streams and there's effluent streams, and it's really important to understand the difference. Influent streams are from rainwater that runs across the surface and washes into stream channels. So this means that if it's not raining, there's no stream. So after it rains, the water gradually soaks into the stream and refills the aquifer. This is really common in arid environments where the water table is really deep. So the key point is that the stream feeds the aquifer. So it rains, the stream fills up, and then over time, the ground absorbs all the water from the stream, and the stream goes away. Affluent streams are the other way around. So these occur when the water table is at or above the height of the stream channel. So the stream is deeper than the water table, so it's acting like a well. It's actually, the bottom of the stream is down in the groundwater, and so water flows all the time. And this is more common in wet, temperate environments. Stream flows even when it's not raining. And the source of the water is water that was previously absorbed from the ground. And so in this case, the aquifer is feeding the stream because the aquifer has extra water. And here in northern Colorado, we have both kinds because we are a semi-arid climate. One of the last components to consider is an impervious area. So this is a structure or surface that's impenetrable to water. So cement, asphalt, sidewalks, rooftops, just natural rock outcropping. And these actually cause movement of water because the water just runs off of them. And the water will just keep moving until it either evaporates or gets absorbed into the ground when it finds something that is not impervious. And impervious areas can actually cause a lot of problems. They can carry pollutants to our water sources from cars and factories and such. It blocks drainage directly into the soil, so it doesn't allow the aquifer to refill the way it naturally would. And it redirects water flow from where it would normally wind up. So that is it for our watershed notes, you guys. You have an assignment on Google Classroom to draw your own watershed. You have a choice to draw it by hand or to make a Google slide, and then you're just going to answer a few analysis questions as well. The instructions are posted. Let me know if you have any questions. Love you guys. Bye.